and joint of the joint Nelson Tasman Regional Transport Committee. What we will do is go straight into the submitters, but first I'll just give you and those on Zoom a couple of things. Those that are on Zoom, if they can just keep their microphones muted and cameras off until they're speaking and during the breaks. For those that haven't been here before, the toilets are out and on the left. And if there is an alarm goes off for a fire, we evacuate between either that door or this door to the rear of the Armadillos building. And if there's an earthquake, we drop, cover and roll. Anything else, the public address system should tell us what to do. So with that, we'll move to our first submitter, and when Brian comes to the table, I'll tell him the procedure for that for the benefit of you all. So Brian, if you're here, would you like to come? You will have 5 minutes to speak. Kelsey will ring a bell at 3 and then we'll conclude at 5. Just there in front of you, be fine. If you just turn the microphone on, press. Yes, councillors, it's page 76. And just pull that in a bit closer, Brian, perhaps, because you need to speak reasonably loudly. So just when you're ready, we're ready to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Right, yeah, Brian Nesbitt, member of the Board of Trustees of Golden Bay High School. We put in a proposal to reduce the speed down road from the start of Rototai Road to Wadsworth Street. That was not in the original proposal, but Wadsworth Street around past the Taka Primary had a proposal that it be reduced to 30 k's permanent. So the Golden Bay High School has had such a lot of changes with the rebuild. Its main entrance now is Rototai Road and not off Whitetap Road. The whole processes of the school are down that road now. The car park that was off Whitetap Road is now half covered by a store shed. And down Rototai Road itself, there is 7 car parks in the next to the new office and administration, and 1 disabled. There's a 2-car drop off and pick up on the same side of the school, and all other parking is on the other side of the road to the school until you get down to Wadsworth Street. The main entrance is like I mentioned, is on Rototai Road. Bus Bay is down the same side as the school, and there is just so much activity that happens in that area that we feel reducing it to 30 k's from the start to join up with Wadsworth Street makes a lot of sense. There is also the outer school activities. Swimming is morning before school and evenings in the summertime. There's playground next to Rototai Road in the school. There's cricket nets for practice. There's the assembly hall is now connected to the main office through that side, where it used to be around the other side for parent-teacher meetings, various shows that are put on. And so the whole school, all that activity has changed the focus to Rototai Road. So the other next part of it is the fact that the Taka co-housing development is, the next proposal is across the road from the school, which when you look at the layout down Mahana Street where the existing one is, if that changes to past Rototai Road, then in future there's going to have to be another reduction if it's not done now. So our proposal is that it's done now. The slowing the speed down, we reported that 1 child had already been knocked off their bike. It was at very low speed and there was very minimum hurt to the child in any way. But if that had been 10 Ks more or 20 Ks more, it would have been a different story. There's been other reports of near misses. So it just makes sense to get down to 30 Ks for less than 400 metres, join up with Wadsworth Street. And it's just, we've put those submissions, you will have come across them somewhere, but it was just, we feel so strongly about it that I thank you to be able to talk today. I'm not going to hold you up anymore. That's part of what we would like, and there isn't a lot more I can add to it.
Thank you. Are you happy to answer questions of
Yes.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Brian, and I appreciate how things have changed there quite significantly.
Very
A
much.
shift from
Yes.
Mahana to Rotatai. Could you just clarify how far down Rotatai you would see the 30K? You said Wadsworth
Yeah,
Street.
to the start of Wadsworth Street, the first part on the left, not the far end type
Right.
of thing, but
That's
just,
what I-
and it's less than 400 metres because I stepped it out the other day and I've only got short legs and I didn't make it to 400. So,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, thanks. That was my question.
yeah. Yes.
All right, good timing. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for coming over, Brian, and
Thanks
making
for
your
your time.
submission. And so appreciate that. Move on to Harry Pearson, page 77, councillors. Harry here.
Kia ora, everybody. My name's Harry Pearson. I'm a Tuhunanui resident and business owner and cyclist. My aim is to push for Tuhunanui as a suburb to have a reduced speed limit of 30 kilometres per hour for the whole suburb. I think in my original submission I might have put 40 kilometres per hour, but after further reading and investigation, I think 30 kilometres per hour is a much more realistic speed limit for a prime holiday destination in New Zealand. Most of you will have seen my submission, which is the background to this. I'd just like to point out some of the advantages of a lower speed limit. I have a total of 11 here. First of all, with a lower speed limit, there will be less accidents, and any accidents that do occur will be less severe. The risk of dying from an accident, if the speed limit is reduced from, for instance, 50 kilometres an hour to 40 kilometres per hour, drops from 90% to 10%, which is a massive difference. And that's just a statistic, but they don't show the reality of the suffering that a road crash causes if someone dies or is seriously injured. Secondly, more people will be encouraged to cycle to work, to the shops, to school, to visit friends and family, etc., because they'll feel a whole lot safer if the other traffic is doing 30 kilometres per hour. Therefore, that will help reduce the number of cars on the road and the road congestion. In Tuhunanui, State Highway 6 divides our community. There's residents, holiday accommodation, shops, services on both sides of the main highway. A lower speed limit will make it easier and a lot safer for everyone crossing State Highway 6. It will also encourage holiday makers to cycle around while on holiday rather than jumping in their cars if they can feel safer on a bike. Some parts of Tuhunanui Hills already have a 30 or 40 kilometre speed limit. A lower standard speed limit for the whole suburb would be more practical and easier to abide by. This would also mean that less signage is required if the whole suburb is one speed limit, and will help ensure that other signage is more prominent. There's also lots of other town centres, including here in Richmond, in Motueka and in Hanna Springs, which already have a 30 kilometre speed limit, so it's not an unprecedented speed limit. Travelling times along State Highway 6 will not be significantly different, especially in peak hour travel times as there's already queues at lights and roundabouts. Many of the roads in Turinui are narrow and windy, so a lower speed limit helps improve safety for all road users. As many e-bikes can travel at 30 kilometres an hour, having a 30 kilometre per hour speed limit would reduce the number of cars that have to pass cyclists and thus make cycling a lot safer for everyone. Another point that most of you will be unaware of is that CO2 emissions will be reduced. In urban areas, the optimum speed limit to minimise vehicle CO2 emissions is less than 30 kilometres per hour. And another point, through the World Health Organization estimates that traffic noise is the second biggest environmental stressor on public health after air pollution. Lower speed limits significantly reduce noise. Noise levels can be cut up to 40% by reducing speeds by 10 kilometres per hour. And so for the disadvantages of a lower speed limit, can you think of any? Whakatu Drive and Annesbrook Drive, between there, the roundabout there and the roundabout at Haven Road, State Highway 6, is a 6 kilometre difference. It's 6 kilometres. The different driving times at different speeds is negligible. At 50 kilometres per hour, that takes about 9 minutes. At 30 kilometres an hour, it will take you a whole extra 3 minutes. Who doesn't have an extra 3 minutes? So please reduce the speed limit in Turinui as a whole suburb, make it a prime holiday destination for all Kiwis and overseas visitors, not only to reduce accidents and save lives, but to make our suburb a better place to live and visit. Reduce speed limits in urban areas not only reduce injuries and deaths, but they also make cities better places to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on the bell, but I will allow Mayor Smith one quick question.
Harry, in the submissions that we've received, there's been a massive response. We've received over 2,249 submissions. 2/3, but over, oppose the general urban limit, option D, of reducing it to 30 kilometres an hour. Even on the option C, which was the 40 kilometres an hour, a clear majority of submissions are opposed. Shouldn't our councils and the Regional Transport Committee take that on board and not proceed with the proposal that you've advocated this morning with such a clear result from the submissions of the public?
That's 200, how many submissions did you say?
2,249.
Right. Yeah, sure. But I think as a hearing panel, you need to look, I think it's important to look at the facts, and it's easy to get a group of people together and make a lot of submissions, promoting one particular cause. But yeah, I can't argue that the majority does support a higher speed limit, but does that actually stand up?
Just as a note, sorry, my number was incorrect. Not 2247. I said 2249. 2247. Isn't it?
Yeah. Which is a relatively small percentage of the population of the whole Nelson.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next speaker, which is David Barkle. Welcome, David.
Thank you. I brought my dog, but he's adding to the evidence. So I'm a pedestrian dog walker cyclist on the outskirts of Brightwater. And so I live near Waimea West Road, otherwise known as the Speedway. And so I use the country roads. My appeal to you is to take another look at the fact there's no speed limits at all on country roads around where I live. And there's a massive increase in vehicles, and particularly people like Waimea Nurseries who've got a lot of vehicles who've taken up residence in Livingston Road. And these vehicles are dual cab use, and so they drive past my property in Aldori Road at 80 or more. And so if I stepped out of the line, that would be it. So I'm still here. So I wanted to get a word in before something else happened.
I'll just get a word. I'll just tell the councillors that page number for yours, 92.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So my submission is on safety and speed, but also I'm concerned, like others, about the climate impacts of our Ford Rangers zooming around. So including the new fleet of vehicles you see in places like Waimea. So Waimea nurseries say Livingston Road is too dangerous for them. They've instructed their drivers not to use Livingston Road to get onto the main road. So they send them down by my place. So these have secondary effects. So I think the council's job is complicated. And as Nick has said, there are a lot of people who don't want any reduction in speed limits, including a lot of people whose income depend on it, as they think. But the evidence, I think, is slightly different. And we have, as your voters and as your council, we have to maintain that discussion to persuade them, as the previous speaker said, that some reduction in speed is not the end of the world in terms of their working day. So in short distance country roads, like the ones where I live, where there's maybe a kilometre here or there, I'm not talking about long distance country roads. It would be great if we went ahead with your proposal to impose speed restrictions as opposed to the current situation of no speed restrictions. So in terms of evidence, my personal observation, the fact that people have died on Waimea West Road and serious accidents have occurred. So accidents occur for all sorts of reasons, including intensifying agriculture and changes in land use. So on Waimea West Road, for example, a lot of side roads. Recently, a truck parked across the side road at 4 a.m. was hit by my friend driving to work. Couldn't see it, no lights. So this is the reality of agricultural land in 2024. You know, more people, more vehicles, bigger, more powerful vehicles, and me and my dog. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, on a Dewey Road, what speed would you be advocating for there?
Hard to tell when you're a district, but I would think if the council, if the council had a general principle of some speed restrictions on these rural roads, that would be a step forward. And I know signage, everything costs you guys. So signage, I mean, I could throw a number out, but you know, you decide. But some speed restrictions will be good. And on these roads, these rural roads, particularly as I hadn't mentioned, that most of them, of course, are single lane. So, you know, if you go up to Tim King's place, fortunately for Tim, he's got gravel and a blind corner, which tends to make people slow. But, you know, if it's straight, you're not in much luck.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, all good. Thank you. We'll move on to Chris Turner, and it's page 81. Councillors. Welcome, Chris. Just when you're ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Oh, I'd get you to turn your microphone on, please, so those on Zoom and behind you can hear.
Well, firstly, thanks for the opportunity to talk to the council. I'm here on the basis I fully support the 30K zoning for the urban areas. And I see we're having a pilot on Hill Street, but frankly speaking, this concept's been proved in other parts of the world and other parts of New Zealand. Why do we need a pilot? Why don't we just get on and do it? And the other point I'd like to make, Nick, is that this is a safety issue, not a democratic voting issue. And that's why I fully recommend the 30K zoning in the urban areas. So if it was a workplace, you'd be shut down for an unsafe condition. So that's why I strongly support the 30K in the urban areas.
Thank you. So is that all?
So,
Yeah, just on like an arterial road like Hill Street, where it's sub length, probably 2 or 3 kilometres, even more, you'd support 30K for the entire length.
well, it's not quite that simple because you're going to take if you leave cars on the road, parking on Hill Street, yes. If you take the parking off and put in cycle lanes and the like, then 50 would be appropriate.
Right, thank you. Any further? Neil Smith.
Yeah, Chris, my question is around the question of safety. That's important.
Yeah.
And I accept, you know, submissions are important, but, you know, we've got to make the judgment on what the right thing is to do. And that's always got to be the guiding principle. On the issue of safety, though, if we look at the analysis, certainly for the Nelson urban area, where speed is a factor in fatalities and serious injury accidents, it is where they're way over the speed limit. I've, at my own property on Waimea Road, 3 serious accidents, every one of them doing over 100 kilometres an hour in a 50k zone. So simply because speed is a factor in the accident does not necessarily mean that the speed limit's the problem when the speed is not being complied with. So do you accept that the majority of accidents in urban areas where speed is a factor is in fact where the existing speed limit is not being complied with rather than the speed limit being inappropriate?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, Nick. I guess your traffic engineers will have that sort of knowledge.
Mm.
And I'm sure they can advise you on that. But I think that the concept in being a cyclist and a walker, the near misses I see with people driving in congested roads with parking and kids around scares the living daylights out of me. And I think putting the speed limit at 30 in the urban areas is a good step forward.
My position is not one of being completely opposed, but I am opposed to the uniform. My view is you need to take a more nuanced approach to actually look at the narrowness of roads around it rather than just the blanket approach. But that's
Well, I don't think the roads were ever designed for 50k driving when you've got parking on it in the urban area, and neither they should be.
Right. I think we'll, don't want to get into a debate. It's more a question and answer session. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but you know, I make the point also, it's not a vote on
No.
whether the speed limit should be. It's a question of the safety in the given areas. And there will be some judgment about that. And someone said previous to me, you have one speed of 30 Ks or whatever the speed is would be appropriate, because one of the things these days, what speed limit am I doing? Am I doing 60, 40, 30? There's a whole range of speed limits, and you know, that would mean you'd have to put a lot of signage out. But if you just make it a blanket 30 in the story in urban areas, then it makes it simple.
Thank you. There was the second bill, wasn't it? Oh, no, so the first bill. Right. And anything else?
No, that's
All good. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
move on. The next speaker is Kyle Lightfoot from the New Zealand Automotive Association. Councillors, it's page 82.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Chairman.
Kyle and Gary.
I'm Kyle Lightfoot. I'm the chair of the Nelson District Council of the New Zealand Automobile Association, and Gary beside me is a past president of the New Zealand Automobile Association. We're a membership-based association with over 1.8 million memberships throughout the country, of which in the Nelson Tasman region there's over 30,000. Many of our members are cyclists, public transport users, as well as motorists. In summary of our submission, our members support reduction of speed limits around schools, marae, etc., on a variable basis. During school hours, etc., and reduction of speed limits in specific areas where evidence shows there are safety concerns under existing limits and based on history. Now, the New Zealand AA regularly conducts membership surveys on various road management issues and invests significant resources through the New Zealand Automobile Association Research Foundation. So a lot of our input is research-based.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. As you know, the AA is a membership-based organisation, so it's fundamental to us to try and get a clear understanding of what our members feel about particular issues. And we do that in a number of ways, including surveying our members on a reasonably regular basis. So we thought it would be useful to you to share some of that information with you briefly. So a recent survey of 2,500 AA members, this was a nationwide survey, of those members that responded, 83% felt that the current speed limits were appropriate and safe. They didn't support any speed reductions. More specifically, when talking about urban speed, we recently conducted a survey of 1,000 AA members in the Auckland region, Auckland being large enough that we can actually survey down to a regional level. And we asked them what was their preferred default speed limit in a suburban residential street. 62% said 50 kilometres per hour, 21% said 40, and only 7% said 30. Waka Kotahi itself also undertakes quite an amount of surveying work. And in 2022, it conducted a survey of nearly 1,700 drivers. And that was specifically about the open road speed limit. But of those that responded, 70% indicated they wanted the speed limit left as it is. So in summary, from our feedback from our members are not averse to speed reductions, but they are definitely adverse to what are called blanket speed reductions. And they were very happy to look at individual cases, which often are brought before committees such as yours, where a particular road, because of its physical constraints, deserves a lower speed limit. But we do not support a blanket speed limit across a whole region.
Since work started on the speed management plan and since our submission, the draft GPS has been released. The new government has publicly stated that this blanket speed limit reductions imposed by previous governments will be reversed. Simeon Brown stated at the New Zealand Herald Project Auckland luncheon on the 21st of March, and before the end of this year, as Transport Minister, I will sign the new rule into force requiring Auckland Transport and other road controlling authorities across the country to reverse blanket speed limit reductions by the end of 2025. Our members request that our city councils and our district councils put their speed management plans on hold, not to spend any more time and resources until the government has released its land transport rule by the end of this year.
Thank you. Happy to answer questions over there. Mayor Smith.
Thanks for your submission. Hugely important. I think you are the largest membership organisation in New Zealand. Question for you is, we've received a lot of submissions from quite distinct communities, and whether it be Ngāti Moti or whether it be little communities like Cable Bay, where it seems the speed limits, no reasonable person will drive through at those areas. Would you have difficulty with this joint committee and councils proceeding with some of those niche non-blanket ban speed restrictions where there have been communities advocating for changes for, in some cases, 5 or 10 years?
Basically, each case on its own merits, definitely. So if there is a specific community and they can support that enhances their environment and it works well within the environment, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. Thanks very much. Right on the bell. Thanks very much for coming in,
Thank you.
gentlemen. Councillors, we'll move on to our next submission, which is on page 85 via Zoom, which is John Paul Ponchin.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. When I was at university in London, I'd cycle to lectures. It was a dangerous place to cycle then, but it was made more dangerous and quite ridiculous by the number of people in fast cars. And you get somebody in a Porsche next to you waiting at the lights to change, the lights to change, and they'd speed off just to get caught at the next light when you catch them again. And this could happen over and over again. If you paid all that money for a Porsche, you don't want to be traveling at 15 miles an hour, but on average, that's what they were doing, and probably a lot less. But that's the marketing versus the reality. Now, I had hoped to show you an animation that highlighted this, but apparently it was too late for it to be included. Unfortunately, I found out I was speaking yesterday. So in the animation, the faster cars speed up between the lights, spending much of the time accelerating and then braking compared to the cars at the slower speed limit. But the time travel is not as different as you might imagine. Reducing the speed limits is better for the environment, less cost in terms of fuel, less wear and tear on the car and the roads due to less braking and accelerating, less pollution, which has a significant health and therefore cost benefit. There's less stress on the driver. We've all seen the driver that just has to overtake just to get one car in front for the sake of a few meters. And by slowing down, everybody down, we can all relax and perhaps arrive at our destination a little less stressed. Now, given that it's likely that for most journeys, there'd be very little difference to travel times if speeds were lowered on urban roads, and given that reducing speeds will mean a reduction in injuries and possibly even deaths, given this knowledge, to not reduce speeds would surely be selfish, to say the least. And as an AA member for 27 years, I think they'll have one less member after today. It would also be self-defeating, even ignoring the environmental damage that affects us all. By continuing to make the roads more dangerous for people that walk and cycle, more people will continue to drive. This is something that isn't shown in the animation that I would have shown you. All the speeds assume the same number of cars. However, with lower speeds, it's very likely there'll be fewer cars and more people will be comfortable cycling. And if more children were happy to cycle or walk to school, or if parents were happy for their children to cycle to school, there'd be fewer children being dropped off at peak times in the morning, for example. And this could have a knock-on effect, meaning the family could not only reduce fuel costs, they may even be able to go down from owning 2 cars to 1 car, or perhaps combined with our improved bus service, they may even be able to get away with having a car completely, significantly reducing costs. The door-to-door time for a person on a bike compared to somebody driving is often a lot less significant than it seems. There's a perception that traveling by car is much faster. While this may be true when the roads are clear, this is often not the case, particularly for short trips. And when parking and walking to the door is taken into account, and at peak times in particular, even on highways, 100 kilometers an hour will just get you to the traffic queue quicker. In the animation that I would have shown the speed where the speed limit is half from 30 miles an hour to 15 miles an hour, it was an English example, the reduction in average speed is only by 1.1 miles an hour. I know that the government has indicated it will amend the rules around setting speed limits to include economic impacts, and I think that's great. As well as reducing fuel costs, by reducing speeds, there is a big opportunity to reduce costs to council and therefore to ratepayers. It's a very cheap way to encourage a modal shift compared to building separated cycle lanes, for example. While the latter is preferable in the long term, and for roads with heavy traffic volumes, it may not be practical on some roads and requires significant capital investment. Additionally, with more cars on the roads, more people and freight are caught in traffic queues, and more of our rates will have to be spent on building and maintaining roads. Lowering the speed limits can be done easily for a whole area with very minimum cost. By reducing infrastructure costs, fuel costs, household costs, health costs, injury costs, and environmental costs, reducing speed limits is surely a no-brainer. And as a bonus, apart from the economic benefits, we may also create a nicer place to live. Reducing speed limits is a win-win for everybody.
Thank you.
Happy to answer any questions.
I'll see if there is any. Does anyone have any questions? Mayor Smith has one.
Yeah, John, I quoted earlier, and you may have heard me, the results of our consultation where over 2/3 of people are either oppose or strongly oppose the 30 kilometres an hour in all urban areas. We live in a democratic community. Don't we have to respect those submissions that have come through, where obviously speed is something everybody's got their view on it, as we found out with the over 2,200 submissions. Doesn't council and this regional transport committee put itself in a difficult position if it ignores the very strong submissions opposed to the position that you have advocated?
No, I mean, I would answer the same as the earlier speaker, which I think spoke very well. I mean, you've got to look at the evidence, and I think a lot of people are misguided. And I think there's a perception that doesn't hold up in reality. You know, we're not, by reducing the speed, I mean, people have this perception, if you reduce the speed limits, we're all going to get there slower. But the benefits are vast. And, you know, surely you would look at the evidence. And as pointed out, that those, you know, the submissions only represent a small group of people, and it's very easy to game the system by getting a lot of submissions through different organizations. You know, I would really hope as an engineer, you would look at the evidence and look at the benefits that lowering the speed limit could do.
Thank you. Thank you. That's time's up. So thanks very much for zooming in and your submission. We'll move on to our next speaker, who is Tanya Gibson.
Thank you.
Councillors, the submission is on page 93. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm incredibly nervous. I've never felt inspired to come to a council meeting before. Thank you for the opportunity, but I'm just so outraged and incensed that I had to make sure that I got here. I'm a Richmond resident. I purchased my house in 1996, not because I adored Richmond, but because I could afford it. And I've been here, I'll just hold it up. I've been here ever since. I've raised a family. I have 4 children and my eldest is 21. I live just in behind Waimea College, so old Richmond, and that Richmond has grown around me. So I am a avid cyclist. I'm a dog walker. I am out there. I have strolled the 1 kilometre to Pack and Save since it existed. And I believe people's fear of the unsafeness is just a false perception. Whilst people are commenting, their intentions are good and their belief on trying to make it safer is a fantastic intention, but what they're trying to make safer isn't actually unsafe in the first place. Following on from that, the road to hell and good intentions, People Project has, in my opinion, vastly made Richmond an unsafer place, and specifically for cyclists. I was amazed the other day, I didn't even know it had happened, just on Salisbury Road, where concrete barriers have now been placed in, almost opposite the car yard. That is at the exact spot as a cyclist where you're cycling along, and I frequently have to turn down Queen Street, where I am looking over my shoulder backwards to gauge where the traffic is at so that I can pull out into the middle of the road so I can go around the roundabout. There are now 4 concrete barriers. So as I'm turning backwards to gauge traffic, I now have an obstacle that is a danger to me right there. I am on an e-bike. I'm frequently travelling at over 30 kilometres an hour. So I either have to brake and get into the lane of traffic before the concrete barriers, arguably and more unsafe, or I have to go past the concrete barriers, a very short distance to the roundabout and hard to negotiate. You would end up stopping, and now you're a stopped vehicle trying to get moving amongst moving traffic. It's far easier to assimilate and go around the corner. So I just noticed that the other day. It's awful. Lowering speed limits around schools. Please don't. I have lived on Sutton Street 20 whatever years. Sutton Street is incredibly busy for approximately 45 minutes a day. Half an hour before school, 15 minutes after school, piles of cars. They have been self-regulating with their speed since the 1960s, since it existed. You do not get people speeding around children. They all just nicely flow. The parked cars act as a barrier, slowing the traffic around, and people are moving cautiously. Where you've taken cars away, like on Queen Street, you have what is a visual alleyway. It looks like a speedway strip now. I'm out walking my dog constantly, and you just feel the personality of the neighbourhood has been taken away. Instead of people parking cars out, chatting to each other, just being part of their business, you now have a sterile strip where it's like, you will be safe. And no increased safety has occurred. The visual distraction from all the paint on the road, what does it mean? Other barriers, right next to the Salisbury Dairy, suddenly an asphalt speed bump has occurred at the end of it. And my partner, who has a back injury and is on medication, did not see it, tripped over it yesterday and literally fell into traffic on Salisbury Road. There is no need for a speed bump at the end of a T intersection. We all know how to drive, we all know how to negotiate, and we can get across that. The safety method, a barrier put in there, unnecessary, is now a danger. Visually impaired people, people with mobility issues. Similarly, the raised speed pumps are a huge concern. People see them as an extension of a pathway and they immediately walk out onto them without gauging the traffic. Similarly, the traffic, and I've seen it, and I have had my first ever incident on Salisbury Road on the raised crossing where an elder lady driver was so focused on the speed bump, she didn't see me, I was already on the crossing. And drivers focus on the speed bump, they're gauging, going over it, as opposed to scanning the pathways on either side and looking for pedestrians. And what I really wanted to get to, and I'm sorry I'm running out of time, this is the Gilbert Street to William Street intersection. And this was at 8:45 yesterday. You'll see not a single human or car to be seen. And that is how Gilbert Street, William Street often is. This raised crossing has been put in, but it is not a crossing. And this is very, very important. Previously, all of the foot traffic was channeled to a safe crossing manned by school guards on Gilbert Street or further down William Street where they could cross over, also a school crossing. Now, a raised crossing has been put in just before it on William Street, directing people to that corner. People are now encouraged to cross on that corner where they never, ever, ever have. And just yesterday, in a 10-minute period, I saw 4 near misses. There were approximately 7 parties crossing the road, and 4 of them could have been an accident. 2 parties stepped straight out without looking. One of them, and I've got the picture, is a car from William Street, coming down William Street, turning to get onto Gilbert. They're already parked in the intersection waiting to turn across the road, and they're watching the traffic coming up William Street towards them. Behind him, a pedestrian has walked down William Street, and just as they're turning, they've already stepped out onto the raised crossing. The person in the car is focused on the traffic ahead and has no idea a pedestrian has come out of nowhere behind him because they're focused. And that person turns across, then has to slam on its brakes, which it did, thus blocking off William Street, straight across the traffic coming up, where it was looking to go through. Similar thing on Hill Street itself, the new raised crossing. I have just about been rear-ended by a car coming out of William Street, turning left, traffic coming down Hill Street, looking up to where the traffic's coming for. I had to stop for a pedestrian and just about got rear-ended. And all of these incidents, I could come up with 20 more. My partner just about took out someone on this crossing. Oh, also very important to say, this is not a crossing. It's not a pedestrian crossing. It doesn't have the lines, but all the pedestrians think that it is. And so they stand out in front of the car.
We're at over 6 minutes.
Yeah, sorry. Really passionate.
I can see.
There was this little, honestly, this little Asian woman, she looked like a little grandmother, come in from recently from elsewhere with her tiny child, nearly got run over on that raised thing yesterday. First day of school back. Incredibly passionate. I understand the good intentions. You've made Richmond dangerous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for your
Yeah.
submission.
Yep. If nothing else, please take out that crossing.
Thanks. We'll move on to our next speaker, who is page 99, and it's Cynthia McConnell on Zoom. Cynthia, good to go. You're on mute, Cynthia.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you,
Loud
Stuart.
and clear.
Kia ora, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today about driving vehicles on beaches, which are defined as legal roads under the Land Transport Act. While forest and birds' interests lie in protecting wildlife on beaches, what works for the safety of drivers of these vehicles and members of the public walking on the beach or small children playing on the beach also works for wildlife. Joyriding on our beaches at excessive speeds that far exceed the safe speed limits set by Waka Kotahi on their website, 30 kilometres an hour where people are present and 60 kilometres an hour where there are no people present. So we're asking you today to consider setting a blanket speed limit of 30 kilometres an hour on beaches, whether the public are present or not. And we believe this would send a strong message to the individuals who use our beaches to drive dangerously. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Cynthia? No, I think we've received the message loud and clear. Thank you. Thanks for your
Okay.
submission, and thanks for taking the time to. Thank you. We'll move on to our next speaker, Bill and Erica Lynch, page 105. Bill, you're here. Bill's here, isn't he?
I guess addressing speed limits is really, in many ways, enshrined in enforceability. And we can work as hard as we like as a committee today, but I'm going to expand my thoughts here to committees that this piece of roading that we as a family and as an orchard practically bound to the whole lot of cannot be enforced. It's now been proven over a period of time that Redwood Valley Lane is a service lane, has been there for 100 years. Unfortunately, with the development of the Transport Holdings farm into lifestyle blocks some 20, 30 years ago, Redwood Valley Lane was not part of the consultations. It wasn't actually formed. The lane finished at the ford from the highway. Subsequent to the lifestyle block, there was a very keen engineer called Roger Ashworth, and he was a great friend of the then CEO, who was the first purchaser of property in the lifestyle block, and he did a wonderful job for his boss. And all the roads were upgraded to a great standard, but sadly then his enthusiasm went a little bit astray, because a private piece of property that linked Redwood Valley Road to Redwood Valley Lane and had been used for 100 years by the farms was mysteriously purchased by council without any resource consent, without any consultations, without any submissions, and without any knowledge of the people who were critically affected by such a move. So that created the Redwood Valley Expressway. And I'm not joking. By far the easiest and fastest access from the lifestyle blocks where many hundred vehicles travel daily is now to take Redwood Valley Lane as the arterial route to the highway. And that's exactly what's happening. So our responsibility as employers under WorkSafe, we are unable to discharge our responsibility to provide a safe working environment. The short point is this. You can take the expressway and get out to the highway in 1 minute, 25 seconds. If you take the proper road that was formed for the subdivision, it's 1 minute, 55 seconds. So you can gain a whole 30 seconds, but you don't need to do any right-hand turns. Redwood Valley Road has 4 right-hand corners, which slow you down to 25k an hour. If you take the Redwood Valley Expressway, you can boot it the whole way through. It's got a couple of very easy bends in it, and you get well down the expressway before you find the first speed bump. There's only 2 speed bumps. Go out the proper highway, there are 4 right-hand angle turns. So the restraints on speed are physical ones, not imposed restrictions that this committee might decide on. So we have an extremely dangerous situation, and it's not just our opinion. Our staff are threatened all the time. It's a very dangerous environment for them to work in. And the intersection at the highway, on the Moutere Highway, this is to be confirmed by police I've talked about the issue with, is the most dangerous piece of roading in the Tasman district, quote. I fully support that, and I'd invite you to just park down the road one morning for maybe an hour or so and have a look at the number of vehicles that are coming out the expressway and unlawfully turning right across the highway, where traffic are coming to work down the Moutere Hill at 100k an hour, and you have a vehicle that's stopped and is chugging off very quietly out across the main highway with 30 metres visibility. This is all feeding out of Redwood Valley Lane and the subdivision, and it's happening consistently, and it's extremely dangerous. So the deliberations that we're making today, we believe will at some stage inevitably be examined by the Serious Crash Squad. It's inevitable. Or WorkSafe will be looking at a fatality amongst our staff or amongst our family. It's an extremely grave situation that can't be addressed today, I realise that. But if we considered the forum as an appropriate place to raise the issue and to work with council to find a resolution. It's our view that unless the expressway link that was created by the creative engineer going back 20 or 30 years ago is closed, or the road becomes a a resident only access, then the junction with the Moutere Highway should be closed. You know, people will be really hard done by if they travel in safety out a well-constructed and planned highway to the Moutere Highway, and it takes them a massive 30 seconds more for the luxury of being safe and having a safe environment for all of us to work and live in. So as such, the submission that we make is, you've probably all got it, we believe the speed is too high on Redwood Valley Road because it's a lifestyle area and there's no provision for people to walk and ride their horses and dogs and things. There's lots of them. But Redwood Valley Lane really needs a lot of work by council and by this committee. And we're very more than happy to be engaged with council to find a solution to make it safe. So that's us roughly.
Thank you. One quick question from Mayor Smith.
Just short, sharp, what's the speed limit that you advocate for Redwood Valley Road? What is the speed limit that you would advocate?
Speed limit is 30, but it's quite irrelevant. Most traffic are travelling at around 50 to 65 k an hour.
No,
And we've checked that.
Is the current speed limit 30?
South Seal. There's 2 speed bumps. Initially, council, we're going to put 4 in to try and make it less attractive as a speedway. One option would be to put 6 speed bumps, so it's far better to go around the right angle corners and get out than go out fast.
So the issue is not the speed limit, the issue is the observance of it.
The issue is really that it is an inappropriate access to a dangerous, very dangerous corner through a intensive farming area. It's creating a lot of danger for staff. Yeah.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill.
Come out and I'll give you a picking bucket for a day and have a look.
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our next speaker, which is Tom Vaughan, and it's page 86, councillors. Tom, are you here? Is Tom here? Not on Zoom. We'll move on then to Chloe Hoadworth and Nikki Mullahan, Forest School. You're here. You'd like to come to the table, ladies? Page 88, councillors.
I'm Chloe Howard, Chair of Hira School Board, and Nick Moynihan, Principal of Hira School. At the moment, the situation at Hira School is that we have a variable speed zone. We're 80 kilometres an hour past the school for most of the school day, with a very short window in the morning of 60 kilometres per hour, 35 minutes at the start of the day and 20 minutes at the end of the school day. We think that all schools, whether they're urban or rural, should be treated equally when it comes to road safety. These are the most vulnerable members of our community, with young children in the vicinity. The schools either side of Hira School, our neighbouring schools are Clifton Terrace. Clifton Terrace has 60 kilometres per hour throughout the day, and that's a school where there aren't actually children crossing the road. They've got the haven on the other side of the road, so there's no reason for children to be crossing the road outside Clifton Terrace. They also have a side road which is 50 kilometres an hour. Rye School, the next school along for us, has 60 kilometres per hour all day. And Hira School is different because we do have children crossing the road. We've got children living opposite the school and crossing the road for excursions throughout the day. And the variable speed zone just isn't enough, and it's putting kids at risk. We have, I'll let Nick talk about some of the sort of day-to-day operational issues, but we also have no turn-in lane to the school to the right as you come to the school from the Nelson direction, which means that, and we have, frequently have logging trucks going past at 80 kilometres an hour with school traffic trying to turn into the car park and no turning lane, which is another risk. We have a small school car park and overflow car parking for the school on the opposite side of the road. So we often have cars parked alongside the road or on the opposite side of the road with kids getting in and out. I also think it's actually confusing, the variable speed zone for motorists coming past the school. I think if they knew that it was a school and that it was a lower speed limit throughout the day, it would be more straightforward. Having to check whether they're in the half an hour at the morning or 20 minutes at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of motorists that just don't observe the signs at all and just always do the same speed past the school. I think it probably is a serious accident waiting to happen, and it's something that we've been lobbying for a while. And we've got a long list of accidents and near accidents at the school.
Kia ora koutou. So I'd just like to add to that, as policies, we're very community-based school. So we do often tree planting, we monitor our river over the road. We did some work with the police to put together a proper procedure and policy for crossing our tamariki across the road. The variable signs that we have, we can turn on for a whole 10 minutes if we need to in the middle of the day to cross the road, which is nowhere near enough when you need to cross children in small groups. And we have had to, in the past, exclude a student who kept running from our school because of a lack of support from the Ministry of Education. However, he would run from the school and run down the highway, and we could not guarantee his safety because essentially of the speed of that road being 80. I kind of think that when we've been told in the past that no, we can't reduce the speed because we can't reduce the flow, the speed of the traffic travelling along the highway, and yet now if you want to ever drive 100 k's an hour, you have to go south of Blenheim or head out of Tahuna. The whole road is slow, so why are we still 80? As Chloe says, where our most vulnerable children are. We also have high school and intermediate students that walk to the header store to catch their buses. In winter at 7:30 when they're doing this, it is dark. You have 3 buses to work around. We have 3 buses that come into our car park of the school to collect our students. It is incredibly congested at those times of the day. And when we have school events on, that congestion is huge. And it seems so dangerous to be at 80 for the majority of that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Smith has a question.
This policy said is not about speed limits on state highways, but the specific thing I wanted to understand is who sets the rules about the 10-minute limitation on you being able to activate the variable speed limit. My understanding is the spot you do it in the morning and the afternoon.
Yes. So what,
but I'm not aware of what the rules are around using it for non-school start.
So what we have access to, it's all automated through a website now. It used to be that we had, years ago, we had a wee dial that you could turn around, and so you had really good, you could put it on whenever you needed to. Now you need to go with your logins and passwords, go into a website and you flick a switch, which gives you 10 minutes and you can't change that. My belief is we can do that when we need to, but once that 10 minutes is gone, you need to re-log in and do it again. And obviously not everybody has that password and the login to be able to do that. Only a few people do. Which
the piece I would like to understand.
Yeah.
I can feel a letter to a minister coming on. Is it the Minister of Transport, or is it Transport or Education?
I believe it's Transport.
It's NZTA.
I believe that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your question.
Matting, it's an area I'm quite familiar with, and it's quite hair raising at times coming through that area. What has happened with your school role over time? Because my impression is that there has been an increase in population in that area. What has happened with the school population?
The school population has fluctuated. So only a few years ago we had 100 students. At the moment we're down sitting at around 60. But because of the nature of where we live, that school roll could easily go back up close to 100 over a number of years. At the moment, we have 8 car parks for 42 families, essentially. So even if you were looking at our roll size, the size of the parking available isn't even near enough for the smaller roll that we have currently. And I can tell you there is not one child that would even think about biking to school, or it's all buses, cars, or parents walking them across the highway, which is pretty hair-raising. Thank you.
Miss Lee with the hand of capable Mayor Smith. I've got to go there.
Welcome, you know the drill.
I do.
We've got 5 minutes. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning. My name is David Martin. I live on Bronte Road East, which is off the State Highway just before Mapua. It's a rural residential road. It's about 1.5 kilometers in length. It's quite narrow in places. It has no central white line, except for a very short stretch of 100 meters. It's unrestricted at present, and we've had a lot of issues with speeding traffic going to building sites and to the hotel, which is at the end of the lane. There's no economic impact in reducing the speed limit since it's only 1.5 kilometers of a dead end, and traffic clearly being slowed down would have very little economic impact. The road is used by strangers because of the hotel, and by contractors because of the numbers of subdivisions the councils approved, and more to come. Hoddy Peninsula, as you know, which is adjacent to the Bronte Peninsula, has a council-imposed limit of 40 kilometers per hour. And it's our, and I speak, I think, for most of the residents on Bronte Road East, it's our contention that we would like the council to apply a similar restriction to the Bronte Peninsula. The effect of the speeding traffic is significant. There is no footpath, so properties give way directly onto the road. It's narrow, and there have been several pet deaths. Pet deaths may not seem a terribly serious thing, but they're terribly serious to the owners of the pets. And my own pet dog was killed on the road only a year ago, and other neighbors have suffered the same problem with commercial traffic speeding along this very narrow bit of road, which has no open visibility to either side. So my plea is that you restrict the speed limit on Bronte Road East to 40 kilometers per hour as it is on Hoddy. That's a less satisfactory but acceptable solution. You could restrict it to 50 kilometers per hour. I still think that's too fast, and I drive it every day. But please, please, please do not restrict it to 60 kilometers per hour. That would be an invitation for drivers to drive at 60 kilometers per hour, which is a very dangerous speed for that road. So perfectly happy if you decide to make it 40. We'd accept 50 with some reluctance, but please, 60 would be a terrible mistake. It would be a license for drivers to drive far too fast. 60 is simply too fast on that road. So thank you very much. If there's any question, I'll happy to take them next.
Yeah, thanks, David, for your submission that you make well both in writing and in your presentation. Quickie, excuse my ignorance, what's the current speed limit on Bronte Road East currently?
100 kilometers an hour.
100 kilometers in. Okay, we get you. Other colleagues, any questions? Thanks very much, David.
Okay,
great to hear from you. Now I'd like to invite Nicola Kessel and Claire Hitchcock. Their submission is on page 90. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou, ko Nicola Gauzel tōku ingoa. I work at the National Public Health Service, Nelson Marlborough, as a Health and Policies Advisor. I've been in the role since June last year, and prior to that, I worked in local government doing community development and regulatory roles for 16 years. Kia ora.
Kia ora, my name's Claire Hitchcock. I'm the Trauma Nurse Coordinator for... Sorry. I'm Claire Hitchcock. I'm the Trauma Nurse Coordinator for Nelson Marlborough. I'm also a member of the National Clinical Trauma Network for New Zealand, and I've been an emergency nurse for about 25 years. Kia ora.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission today. We wish to take our submission as read, but would like to go over some of our key recommendations. Speed management is a very successful tool for preventing deaths and injuries on our roads. Reduced speeds also indirectly influence physical activity by encouraging the use of active transport, which has a positive influence on health and well-being. The greater uptake of active transport reduces carbon emissions and it contributes to climate change. As outlined in our submission under urban roads, we fully support option D. International best practice identifies 30 kilometres an hour as a desirable speed limit on roads and where there are high numbers of active road users, especially children. Slower speeds encourage active transport and the health benefits associated with it. Physical and mental health are boosted by activity and time spent outdoors. We recommend prioritising school zones and using appropriate traffic calming measures. Tamariki are unpredictable and more vulnerable, particularly with the greater uptake of scooters and bikes. Also, sometimes tamariki do not wear helmets when scootering, so reduced speeds are even more important. Under rural roads, we recommend the adoption of option 4. Reducing speeds around schools under this option should again be made a priority to support tamariki utilising active transport. We strongly support the Council's work with the New Zealand Transport Agency in reducing speeds around or outside Category 2 schools situated along state highways. We encourage the inclusion of further schools located near or on state highways having reduced speeds to support safer commutes and greater uptake of active transport. As noted under crash data on the consultation web pages, there has been a 62% reduction in fatal and serious crashes along State Highway 60 Appleby Highway since the speed was reduced from 100 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour in 2018. Adopting option D under rural roads will support greater safety for all road users, particularly as many of these roads can have faster speed limits, be unsealed, windy and narrow. Reduced speeds on our highways is also generally more fuel efficient. The faster a vehicle travels, the greater the wind resistance, which consumes more fuel and increases fuel emissions. In a climate crisis, we should be prioritising areas where we can make a difference. I'll now hand it over to Claire.
Road traffic and pedestrian traumatic injuries add significant pressure to not just the emergency department, but the whole of hospital system on a weekly basis in Nelson Marlborough. Higher speeds lead to higher collision speeds, causing more severe injuries. Reducing vehicle speeds is the most common sense approach to decrease severity of injuries to everybody, and especially our vulnerable populations, including our young and our elderly. Simple physics shows that reduced speeds will lessen the severity of injury by decreasing the deceleration or the sudden expecting stopping. Lowering road speeds appropriately reduces significant injuries requiring acute and/or surgical care when Nelson Hospital already has limited resource and staffing. Trauma affects all ages, but elderly and young people can have worse outcomes due to body mass, frailty, and other chronic long-term chronic illnesses. And elderly people, unfortunately, may not survive these injuries at all. There have been patients who have been over 70 years old hit by cars around Nelson in the last few years who have not survived their injuries that they sustained. This is not only tragic for families to lose a loved one, but an avoidable death from a car crash has lifelong implications for family, whānau, and for all the staff at the hospital involved in their care. When a person is hit by a car, this starts a cascade of out-of-hospital and hospital processes which involve many highly trained staff, from ambulance, prime responders, helicopter crews, nurses, doctors, physios, orderlies, and our amazing administration staff as well. And while a severely injured patient is being transported to hospital, they may have a trauma call, which is made to the hospital to alert specialist clinicians to come to the emergency department, which in turn affects other planned care in the hospital. So unfortunately, if a patient has got an elective surgery planned for cancer surgery, possibly, it may be cancelled because the surgeon has to go to the theatre to perform possibly a splenectomy or removal of a spleen from abdominal injuries from a car crash. The more severe the injury, the more risk it carries. Spinal injuries at any age cause catastrophic life changes, including many months rehabilitating outside Nelson Marlborough because we don't have a rehabilitation facility here. Severe brain injuries changes a person's personality, and again, they would have to go outside Nelson Marlborough for their rehabilitation. Hospital transfers for severely injured patients to tertiary hospitals also put lots of risk to the patients and the staff, whether that's by fixed wing or helicopter. And it's also a huge drain on our hospital services and a huge financial cost as well.
Thank you.
Sorry?
You have gone over time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd just like to say, as clinicians, there's only so much we can do for our injured patients, and reducing speed appropriately on our road is really a common sense move. Thank you.
Questions from colleagues? I've got two questions for you. The first question is, do you accept the transport accident data in our region showing that the greater number of accidents where speed has been the primary cause is where the existing speed limits have not been met rather than the speed limits being flawed, i.e. I give the example of my own property on Waimea Road, where I've had 3 serious accidents, and all of them where people were travelling at speeds over 100 kilometres an hour in a 50-kilometre area.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, going at 100 kilometres in these that's just not acceptable. My specialty is data collection within the hospital, so to reply that, I'm probably not the right person. I don't know whether Nicola you can go with that as well.
The other more difficult question I have for you is this. Do you have the support of Whātua Ora Healthcare New Zealand, its board and minister, in your submission? That is, I've heard submissions from you opposed to the construction of the Hope Bypass, which has been absolutely a declared policy of the current government. The policy that you have advocated in your submission today directly contradicts the policy of the Transport Agency, and which the minister have announced of opposing blanket reductions in speed limits. It seems that we've got an awful disconnectedness within government when I have Whātua Ora saying one thing on behalf of government and NZTA and the Transport Ministry saying something else. So I come back to my question. Are you confident that you have the support of the Whātua Ora Healthcare New Zealand board and your minister in the submission today calling for blanket speed limit reductions?
Nicola, I probably have to refer to you, I'm sorry.
Look, we're simply advocating today that the lower the speed limit, the less likely there will be a crash.
No, I understand that. I want you to address my question. Do you have the support of the board of Healthcare New Zealand, Whātua Ora, and your minister in the submission that you bring in their name to our Joint Transport Committee today?
Our submissions are signed off on a South Island basis, so they are reviewed further up the food chain.
But do you understand our problem that we've got part of government saying one thing and you're part of government saying something quite different? It seems quite perverse.
We can only speak on what we've signed off today. So, yeah.
Well, could you clarify for me, I don't expect you to do so today, that you have the support of the Healthcare New Zealand board and Whātua Ora in your submission and calling for blanket speed limit reductions? And while you're at it, could you also check whether that is the position in opposing the Hope Bypass?
Yep, we can do that.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Any other submissions from colleagues? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Paul Hayward.
Get lost with that, man.
My name is Paul Hayward. I've had a license for 70 years. I've driven in many countries, so I think I can claim I'm an awful lot of driving over a wide range of types of roads.
We can get you around
the country. More importantly, cost effective. It's been 22 years on the Automobile Association in the Northern District. In the initial, 10, 12 years, I was a liaison person with the AA to the TDC, and I enjoyed my time. And one of the main roles was, in fact, participate by regulation in the setting of determining any application for limited speed zones within the county. In those days,
yeah, I suppose it's
In those days, there was a criterion which in fact we went through. It was specific to the roads. It included the gateways, special circumstances. There were a number of occasions where in fact there would have been seasonal applications, therefore it wasn't for a full year. The main criteria also was in fact that there was a responsibility of drivers to drive to the conditions. And that really was the byword in those days, that in fact there was a responsibility of drivers to drive to the conditions. In those days, the speed limit on the rural roads was 100. And I would suggest that in fact to apply any blanket application to a rural road is in fact the height of impossibility. The variability of the road in any rural area goes from speed requirements according to an individual responsibility of 20k to that in fact the limit of 100 that applies today over a lot of the rural roads. I acknowledge that in fact I think we should all acknowledge the difficulty of what you in fact are facing today. It's a difficulty in fact for the whole country. Speed is a very the perception of speed is in fact a variable factor. All of us have a different perception on that. And how you actually deal with that, I think, is a real dilemma. My concern is that we tend to drop to the lowest denominator, which I think is actually not the way to solve it. There are specific requirements, and the process that we used to have, I would think, in fact, needs to be brought back, which in fact is you deal with specific applications, special circumstances. And the most logical one, of course, is in fact with the schools. I've always been a strong supporter of the limitations, and I would like to congratulate the TDC in the past and the fact that they were fairly quick in bringing forward the illuminated restricted signs, speed signs down to 40k for the schools. In my view, that was one of the most important aspects in terms of safety and management and the location of the schools, hospitals or congested areas. In a city situation, urban situation, well, let's take Matawaika High Street as an example. I see it's absolutely ridiculous to have, in fact, a 30k zone through the centre part of Matawaika High Street. No one adheres to it. The other problem is that a road is 24 hours a day. So how do you actually determine that 30 is the appropriate one at midnight? And the thing is, if you go to Matawaika in January, February, it's self-regulating. That's the only time that, in fact, we travel at 30 or less on High Street because there's a lot of traffic. I have enormous respect for most people, in fact, adhering to the conditions of the road, conditions at the moment that they are driving. You take the road here between Nelson, Richmond and Matawaika. Most of the time it's single lane these days. It's self-regulating. The other problem in terms of having multiple speed limits is that you're always looking for a sign to find out what speed you're meant to be doing. You're always looking at your speedometer, or you're looking for a sign to, in fact, remind you, in fact, what your speed is. That is distraction. The other point is, do you realize that possibly the majority of accidents are human error? I'm not talking about the idiot factor. Be very careful to, in fact, pull down or make speed limits according to the idiot factor. They're always there. If you look at the road accidents today, they are terribly, very variable within the regions. I remember some years where Nelson Waimea's had very high death rates. And from one year to another, that is very, it's not a constant. Education of people, particularly in getting a license, is absolutely crucial. License is not a right of an individual right, it's a privilege. We ought to spend more time on the human aspect, the human error. How do we actually provide the education? I would suggest that the other points is the delineation of our roads, and that's your pegs, also your white lines. We have a huge dependency in that centre white line. We all keep to our appropriate side, and we've gone through the overseas people who have in fact been the problem in relation to that. The other point is I would suggest in terms of road safety, you ought to look at having more white lines on some of our busy rural roads. And particularly in terms of night driving or heavy rain. In my view, there are areas of where in fact road safety can be improved. I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of money that's been spent to prevent people driving off the road. I've always wanted to drive on the road. I would like to finalize the fact that say driving is 100% concentration. Now, can you tell me how often you see signs either by NZTA or you people promoting that driving is 100% concentration? Now, that's my strength, that in fact, I can see a situation well ahead of reaching it that would reduce the speed that I happen to be actually traveling. I believe I'm fortunate I have a road sense, I can read a road. How many people today read a road? They have better technology in their car than they've ever had. Terrific technology, it helps them stay within the lanes. It doesn't necessarily stop them driving off the road. So why do so many people have head-on collisions? So many people get distracted. Distraction is our single biggest enemy. And then you have cruise control. You go into cruise control. Fine, you stay within the speed limit, but you spend more time looking around at the scenery. There's your distraction. And I mean, within a car, there are so many distractions that occur at any time. Concentration, 100% of the time, is actually an individual discipline. And therefore, I would suggest to you that we must not forget the human aspect in terms of accident. It is the main cause of accidents.
Sorry, we're at 7 minutes.
That's okay. I hope I made my point.
But I can tell you're very passionate about this, as you've always been. So thank you. And I certainly appreciate the point about read the road. Right. I don't think there's anyone else here, as no one on Zoom either. So we do have one submission that this is from Anne Grasham. She was going to speak, but she's asked that I read it out. So I asked, road safety is important, but reducing the speed of vehicles is only one factor contributing to safer roads. Other factors include better road engineering and maintenance, separating faster and slower road users, e.g. trucks, cars, cyclists and pedestrians, improving driver and other road user behaviour, and having better vehicle design and maintenance. Reducing vehicle speeds will lead to lower productivity, whether it's moving freight and people around the district or simply time spent getting everyone to and from work, school, shopping, etc. This applies regardless of whether people are urban or rural, for it impacts rural people more because of the greater distances they have to travel. While it was not Tasman District Council's responsibility, the reducing speeds on Highway 6 between Richmond and Wakefield are a case in point and significantly affect everyone living south of Richmond. In formulating your plan, I urge you not to take the simple and cheap solution to road safety. Please ensure that any desire for reducing speed is balanced against the resulting loss of productivity for our region, and be prepared to seriously consider other means of improving road safety in your plan, so that as a regional we can grow rather than stagnate. After all, a vibrant region will be better able to afford the cost of better quality roading, whereas slowing traffic down will help our economy slow down too. Anne Grasham, who lives at Hivapango, which is at the bottom of the Golden Downs. Thank you. It appears we have no other speakers. Is that the case, Kelsey? Okay. We'll take a 10-minute break now. In fact, we might even make it 15 minutes, eh? It's been a long morning, and so that'll make it 11. In fact, we'll come back at 11:15, which is 19 minutes. And then we'll see if anyone's come or whether we close the meeting at that stage. Yeah. Submission hearing. We do have one further submitted, Craig Duff here. Craig, welcome. If you'd like to come up to the table. Councillors, this is, submission is on page 102. If you grab a chair and turn the microphone on in front of you. Warm welcome. You do have 5 minutes allocated. Kelsey will ring a bell at 3 minutes and then again at 5. So just when you're ready then.
Okay, thank you. I'm a Cable Bay resident and I have been there for 15 years. And in that time, I've watched the traffic increase probably at least fourfold in that time. It used to be a quiet little backwater. I'd like to do my talk in just 2 parts. The first part is the major part of the road when you turn off the highway.
Hang on a minute, Craig, I'll give the councillors a roll. No, it's 102. Sorry, I misread that. Yeah, rather than, yeah.
Okay, so can I go? All right, so what happens is you turn off the highway, which is now 80, which is really nice. And then it says 100 Ks on this narrow, windy country road, which has got wandering stock on it, rock falls that fall down regularly. You've got people daring enough to go out there on bicycles. You've got runners, and then you have in the mix, you have tourists in these ginormous camper vans. Some of them from France. They occasionally like to drive on the wrong side of the road, and one of my neighbours had a head-on collision with one of them and wrote their car off. You have big 4x4 cars, continuous streams of them with boats and jet skis and all the rest of the paraphernalia, and giant caravans going down this road in a mix with all these other things that are going on. So I just find that that's a ridiculous speed. It's dangerous. I think 70 Ks would be a more sensible. There's a few places where you could do 100 on the first straight stretch, but the rest of it is fraught. And there's so many corners you don't know what's around the other side. And there's lots of people who are going over the edge. There's been lots of holes and fences and cars sitting in paddocks lately. Okay, so that's the first part of the road. And then when you get towards about 2.5 Ks before the beach, you get the residence. And there's about 30 or 40 houses there. I haven't done a proper count. But I did count up, there's 10 children there, some of them quite young. There's no footpaths there. There's nowhere to move. People have to try and walk down the beach, and you're on this narrow road and you've got a big camper van coming for you. So you fall back against the hedge, and quite often people have large cars with trailers that stick out and they forget they've got a trailer that sticks out. So they get, very close to you. So at the moment, we've got roadworks happening at Cable Bay, and they've got the speed limit at 30 K. And that's really nice because everyone has really slowed down and it feels just so much safer. It is proposed to be 50 K, which is a lot better than 100 K. But the 50 K, as you all know, people don't always stick at 50 K and don't know the road. And it's at this point in time very hazardous. My partner and I, we can't walk down the beach anymore, especially in summer when there's so many cars. That's just about all I have to say, except that I think I look at the Glen, and the Glen, when you drive into the Glen, they've got this beautiful big sign that says residents, speed limit. I think something like that, where the residents start, because it's a lot of the houses are tucked in off the road with blind driveways. So I think it'd be really good signage for cars coming out there to know that there's actual people living out there. And that's about all I need to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Craig. I think Mayor Smith has a question for you.
Hey, thanks, Craig. And appreciate your advocacy on behalf of the community, of which there's been a number of conversations. You're advocating 70 K from State Highway 6, and then a change over to 30 in that effectively the area.
Yeah.
Could you indicate to me, I've just got the Google map on me, where do you think the change point should be from the 70 to the 30 under
well, as you come up the sort of last, there's a long stretch and you come up to the last hill. There used to be a place called Cable Bay Kayaks on the right
Yes,
there.
know where it is.
That's the style of houses, and lots of people walk as far as down there. We have a lot of people. What happens at the moment is you've got people staying at the camping ground who don't know the road, and they're out jogging in the morning on this road. And if you jog down that's just before I was saying there's a straight stretch. That stretch is like the Motueka Bridge. You drive along there, and there's a huge car coming at you, and you think you're going to lose your mirror. So if you imagine that, and you're a runner down there, and two cars are coming, there's nowhere to go. You'd have to leap over the fence. You know, it's so. Anyway, so from that point, yeah.
If we went from where was a Cable Bay Kayaks, that would satisfy.
Yeah, around there would be, or a bit further towards the beach, but around there, that area would be really good.
And can I just check one other thing?
Yeah.
I was at a recent event when we were acknowledging the contractors on the Cable Bay Road, and there was a discussion amongst residents.
Yeah.
And there were strongly held different views.
Yes.
What discussion have you had with as a council? We're very keen to
I get that.
try and get a position that is supported by the majority of residents. Did you have any discussion with neighbours in the wider Cable Bay community?
We did, yeah.
And coming to the
My wife and I had quite a lot of discussions.
and I hope you did what you were told.
And most, sorry?
And I said, I hope you did what you're told when you had the discussion with your wife, because that's what I did.
I did, and yes, that's right. So yes, most people on the same page. My wife, she was thinking speed humps. That pushed people over there. That didn't want speed humps, you know, because of all the noise, I guess. But so that's why I didn't mention speed humps today. But generally, most people are on the same page. Okay, that's that.
Thank you. Time's up. So thanks very much. I'll allow it.
Just a quick
Neil
one.
Stevens, since you've been so quiet this morning.
In terms of, so you've suggested that 70k from the road right through. What was proposed as part of option D in the rural options was doing 80k through to on that sort of first stretch where it is quite wide and straight.
Right.
And then as it narrows, dropping down to 60, and then in the proposed.
But just for that straight, I was thinking of that.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if you've got a view on the 70 way through versus a sort of stepped approach down.
No, although it does get confusing when you have lots of different stuff. Like at the moment when I drive into town, there's about 20 signs, at all these different speeds. It's unbelievable. I don't know how many times I've dug that road up. But anyway, yes, that's the only place you could do 80 safely, and I wouldn't mind that, you know. And then you drop it once you hit that first lot of corners, then 60 or 70, 60 would be good. But realistically, I think 70 is probably, you know, you got farmers with sheep in the back, and they like going fast, you know. It's just like, anyway.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks very much for coming in. We'll move on to our next submitter, who is Tom Horn. And councillors, it's page 86. Probably have 5 minutes. Kelsey will ring the bell at 3 and then again at 5.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Right, I am a Maraha resident. Also believe there is a submission, or I think there was going to be a Zoom link with the
86. I think they said 85. So.
With the Maraha Residents Ratepayers Chair. I'm not aware what's happening, but anyway, that's information I have. So I'm not the only speaker to matters of speed limit in Maraha.
No, we were expecting Chris Rutledge, but hasn't.
Chris Rutledge, correct, yeah.
Oh, he's on Zoom.
He's on Zoom.
He'll go after you.
Okay.
Unless you want to swap places.
No. I'm here and present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry on then.
Yes. It was about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when the speed limits in Maraha have been changed. And it was a great change down to 30 k's down the beachfront. And it's been very welcomed by me and by all residents of Maraha. However, there were two corners left, which don't make any sense given there's a 30k speed limit right through the village. But Harvey Road received a 60k limit. I live at the end of Harvey Road. It's a narrow road, which allows for 1.5 cars to pass. And a lot of pedestrians going to Old McDonald's Farm, to the barn, a lot of residents, young families in prams, walkers, horses, including horses as well. There's a horse tracking business there. And it's total nonsense to keep Harvey Road on 60 Ks. It doesn't make any rhyme, no reason. So it needs to come down to 30 Ks. I'm very concerned about the speed at the Park Cafe corner as well. At 60 Ks, this is a lethal corner because there's no visibility. I really urge the council to really look at that. That's one. Two is Maraha Valley Road. It's a long road which has numerous driveways which have no visibility. It got pedestrians on it. It got bikes. There's a population about 100 to 150 people. It ends at the farm, the Maraha community. There's a lot of young people around as well, and bikes, horses and prams, and I'll probably repeat myself. And this is a open limit speed road, 100 Ks. It's unbelievable. And before the 100 limit speed sign are signs, horses, children, and all these sort of things. And it's a 100 K road. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, it's a very, very dangerous road. I'm amazed we haven't had any accidents there. It's got to come down. I really urge the council to come that down before we have a major accident on that road. And it will make the road so much safer for people to use their bikes or walk rather than using their cars. At the moment, we have a tank type situation where a lot of locals use their cars to be safe, to go down to the Park Cafe, for example, for dinner in the evening. And they use their cars because they're safe in those cars, but they're not safe to walk down that road. I really urge the council to really revisit that. And I mean, 30 is probably tough for commuters and for local people, but bring it down to 50, please. I don't know why this has been left out in the last review. I really don't understand the logic behind the 60 Ks in Marahau and the 100 K sign on Maraha Valley Road. It doesn't make any sense to me. That's my submission, and I have a question. I need some advice.
I'm not sure.
I think there are a lot of competent people here to listen to my question. It has to do with speed limit. And what I want to ask is, when you're going up to the top of the Maraha Hill, there is a lay-by, right? And it's not signposted. So backpackers, camper vans, and I live in Maraha, this is a tourist town. Yeah, there's a lot of frustration when you drive up Maraha Hill behind camper vans or trucks, logging trucks, CJ trucks. There's so much happening. This is a wonderful lay-by created by the council. It's not signposted. Yeah, what do you call these?
Slow vehicle passing.
Slow vehicle passway, thank you. That needs to happen there. It's such an easy thing to do. Doesn't cost much money, but the effect is just awesome.
Richard will take a note.
I know this is not part of your job here, but I'm asking you what can be done about it.
Yep, no, we can look into that.
Cool.
Thank you. We'll allow Mayor Smith one question.
Hey, in your written submission,
We're at the second.
it advocates for 39 kilometres an hour. I'm assuming that's a typo. And
Sorry, it's a
30.
typo.
Yeah.
30, yeah.
I assume so.
Yeah.
But
one more quick one on advice too, which is the Kaiteri Road hitting the Marahau Sandy Bay Road. No stop sign, 80 K sign right before the before the junction. We had a major accident there. Nearly cost my friend Mark his life on his motorbike. He slowed down. He could see backpackers are on their phones. They're confused. They look left before they look right because of habit. The speed needs to come down. There needs to be a stop sign there. So easy to do. There's 2 near fatal accidents in the last 9 years there, and they're all my friends.
Are you a member of the Marahau Residents Association?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, you could perhaps would give your case more weight if you were to get them.
That would be great to have that considered there.
Yeah, thank you. And now we can hear from Chris Rutledge from the Marahau Sandy Bay on Zoom. Chris, welcome. And councillors, it's page, I'm not sure I've got a page number, Kelsey again. Anyway, it's submission 18901. But anyway, Okay, right. But anyway, I'm sure Chris will cover off what he needs to tell us. So welcome, Chris, and when you're ready, you have 5 minutes.
Look, thank you very much for the opportunity to represent the views of the Marihau Residents and Ratepayers Association about speed limits. It's a matter that, as you would have apprehended from Tom, is an important matter for the Marihau community. So we have made a written submission, and it sets out all of the points that we've wanted to raise and for the council to give consideration to. I'm just going to briefly touch on a few things. I won't necessarily dwell in detail on each of the matters that we've raised, but I'd like to start by just setting the context. Look, Marihau is quite a unique community. There's one road in and one road out. And once you're in the village, it's certainly our view that pedestrians, cyclists need to be given priority. There is no through traffic through Marihau. The speed limits within the main part of the village were reduced to 30 k's not so long ago, and that's great. Tom's highlighted the anomalies that currently exist. Harvey Road, which is very short from the Park Cafe up to the barn, and actually you'd have to accelerate very quickly to achieve the maximum illegal speed there, at which point you would be slamming on the brakes because you'd have come to the end of the road. It's anomalous and it should be addressed, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be the same speed limit as is applicable elsewhere in the village. Tom's also highlighted the Marihau Valley Road. Now, 100 k's along that road, which is winding and undulating and often with limited visibility, is just risky. And again, it's another anomalous situation. 30 k's is not what we're advocating. We're advocating or recommending that the application of the proposed framework that you have should apply to that road, which I think would reduce it to 60 k's. We also need to ensure, and I'm not entirely clear on what the legal speed limit is in Franklin Street, another very short street, and New Haven Crescent. But I think because of the nature of Marihau, apart from the Valley Road, 30 k's would be appropriate throughout the village. In the summer season, I'm sure have all been to Marihau. We have a very large number of visitors. We have large numbers of free-range children. And we want to create an environment where people feel safe, parents feel safe, and children aren't at risk. As we all know, below the age of 12, you can't trust a child near a road. That's Marihau in a nutshell in terms of the things that we'd like to see addressed. I'd just like to reinforce some of the issues that Tom's raised on the road coming into Marihau. First of all, is the Marihau Hill Road. We have large trucks coming over the hill to the quarry off Moss Road. The nature of the hill road constrains people's speeds mostly, but we're recommending that the speed limit on the hill should be 60 k's. There are some extremely tight corners on the road, particularly on the Rawalka side at the bottom, and meeting a logging truck or a CJ's truck at that point is not a happy experience. Not that they're necessarily traveling fast. When it does, so that's one thing we'd like consideration of, please. Also from the bottom of the Marihau Hill Road on the Marihau side to Moss Road, there is a tendency for the trucks coming down the hill to speed along that section of the road. Again, it's an undulating, some bends in there. There are houses with driveways off both sides there. We would like the speed limits reduced on that portion of the road leading into Moss Road. That's what we do get some trucks coming into the main village, but primarily that's the issue that we have at the moment, that we want some limitation on the speeds of the trucks coming off the hill. Tom's also raised the issue of the intersection of the Kaiteriteri Sandy Bay Road and Sandy Bay Road. It's currently a give way, and it's included in our submission. Tom's raised the issue that we have a large number of international visitors who drive on the opposite side of the road, and they will always instinctively look the wrong way. If you've ever been overseas into the US, I constantly get hauled back off the road because I've looked left rather than right. So we've had, as Tom has alluded, we've had a recent serious accident there, and one of longer standing. What we don't want to do is to see there be this last accident caused a serious injury to a Mauhara resident who was travelling out of Mauhara on their motorcycle, and a car turned onto them. Now, that wouldn't necessarily be fixed by the stop sign, but we are aware that, ironically, that this is a rural intersection that poses a risk because of the peculiar nature of the people using it. And we would recommend and ask for consideration of it being turned into a stop sign. Those are the key things that all of the matters that we've raised, that Tom's addressed, set out in our submission. And we thank you again for the opportunity to represent these views. And, traffic, the management of vehicle traffic in the village is an important issue to the Marihau community. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll just see if there are any questions. Do we have time for one quick one? Mayor Smith.
I'm struggling with the names of the streets and the different roads. Would it be possible for your residents association just to do a supplementary note and superimpose over a map the colours of the different stretches? I know some of the main roads you're referring to, some of the others I was a wee bit confused by. Obviously very keen, you're a representative association, to hear the perspective and understand the unique position you have with so many tourists in such a concentrated small area. But for me to fully understand your submission, a little map like that would just be really helpful.
We will endeavour to arrange that.
Yeah, if you could just send it to our administrative team. I'm sure we'll get it to the elected members one way or another. Thank you. And thanks very much, both of you, for your submissions. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
No trouble. Kelsey, where to now? We're finished. Right. So, Dwayne, have we closed the formal part of the meeting? Then we'll come to what's next. Would you like to do the closing character, please?
Yeah, cool. And apologies, I realised I did this at the end of yesterday's meeting when it should have just been held over. Anyway, you're going to hear it twice. Kia hika te korero, kia watia te mama te manawa o te tangata, kia u ki te ara mau tātou e oranei, kia ronga kia runga, kia tina, huie taikie. Let discussions be lifted, clear away and ease the hearts of people, keep focus on the path of life, peace is upheld, say yes, bind together, and so it is. In terms of next steps, yesterday's little, oh sorry,